Hey, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Watches with Dennis. And we've got our live stream here for the morning, well, my morning of January 27th, 2024. So today, we've got 5 watches that have been recently revealed. We're still months away from Watches and Wonders, but we're starting to see a lot of brands pushing out new watches, new content. And so I think we've got some pretty interesting things to talk about, or at least at least explore as concepts, because some of these are actually going to be, at least 2 of these 5 are actually more than one watch. So we'll be diving in a little bit into that. I do have a couple of videos that have come out recently. So actually, before I do that, so why were there 2 videos? Well, for fun, right? To give you guys content. Well, okay, that's part of it. But we had a lot of ice that developed over Sunday night, I would say. So Monday morning, I do have a partial video of this. I've chosen not to put it on YouTube because, one, it has nothing to do with watches. 2, it's not a very good view, and because it's obfuscated from where the camera was. And 3, it's not the it's not the most flattering image. But while I got down my steps of my porch, I wiped out in the driveway, like full on starfish, land on the back, sort of thing. So I don't see any bruising physically on my skin, but my ribs have been hurting all week. So you get 2 videos because I couldn't sleep very well until about 2 days ago. So it's getting better. But that is why I actually ended up doing those 2 videos. Is I actually was getting up extra early in the morning before it was time to go to work. And I was like, you know what? I can't go back to sleep. Let's just work on something. What's come out? And we had a couple fun ones. So first one, I'll go ahead and share the links in the live chat for those watching live. But it's a short. So I hadn't done a short actually in any, like, a lot of times if I do a short, it's like just a wrist shot or something. They're not usually particularly clever videos. But I have on occasion done produced ones where I actually use my video editing software, and throw it together almost like a normal pre-recorded video, except I keep it under a minute. So anyway, there was a Tamira. I think I mispronounced. It's probably Tamara Ralph collaboration video. It's an AP collab. What a shock, guys. But but we got a new CEO at AP, and apparently the strategy is the same. So anyway, that video goes through and gives some really fast thoughts, some really brief specifications, gives you a few good looks at the watch. Shout out to one of my 99-cent club members, Ken, who brought this one up in the Discord channel, which link in the video description if you want to join the Discord, uh, as a watch for me to talk about. And I was like, I'm not going to talk about that. It's a watch targeted to women, and I don't usually spend a lot of time talking about those watches because I don't wear them. But in this particular case, it so much plays into everything that I criticize about AP. How could I not? And so I thought, you know what, I'll do it. But I'll do it as a short. In reality, editing a short and editing a 5 to 10 minute video, they take about the same amount of time. The only thing that's any quicker is the amount of audio I recorded. So, but when it comes to editing, you still have to do all the overlay stuff. Not that anyone cares. So I did that. And then second video, which I will go ahead and drop a link to as well. This is not very long. It's under 5 minutes. But Swatch released their financial report for 2023. So I went through the press release with that. That press release is actually fairly detailed. Now, you can't get full on specifications. I actually last year wrote to the whoever the PR contact is at Swatch Group and asked them. I'm sure they loved it. I was like, "Hey, Dennis here. Can I want to have more detailed financials. Like, I want to know how much income versus expense did Rado do. I want to know the breakdown on Mido. I want to know Omega's specification." And they're like, "We don't give that stuff out." So I was like, "Okay, well, I thought I would try." So anyway, so they keep some things very, very, very basic, and they it is what it is. So anyway, I have a very short video that kind of walks through. They did not meet all their projections. So that one was interesting. I know I've not read it yet. LVMH just had theirs come out as well. I think I heard they did. So LVMH, I guess, nutshell summary, it sounds like LVMH did better than Swatch Group did in terms of meeting expectations, but Swatch Group still saw growth. There are a few things in play that didn't work to their advantages, so to speak. So that's what's been happening. So let's go ahead and we'll greet who are currently talking in the chat, and then we will start going through these five announcements that I went ahead and cherry picked for discussion today. So good morning, Kevin. Welcome to the live stream. Good morning, Tuna, and thank you for being a 99 cent club member. I extend the same thanks to Koji, who's noted new AP CEO, same as the old one. Frowny face smacky face, and shruggy hands in despair face. I don't know. I'm just impressed that those icons actually showed up on this. StreamYard doesn't like everything that overlays. They're uh, very picky. Tuna notes, LVMH didn't really do cheaper though. No, and I think we could say the same thing for Richemont, right? I don't know if Richemont's report is out yet. I don't know if they operate on the same fiscal calendar or not. You don't have, a lot of companies like in video games, for example, they'll start their new fiscal year in April, like April 1st. But there's no rule, like there's no corporate rule that has to be the case. So working in government for as long as I have, it's always been inconvenient because we do by like in Kansas by law, the fiscal years are set. So local governments do calendar year fiscal years. The state's fiscal year starts in July, and the Fed's fiscal year starts U.S. federal government starts in October. So I don't know why they're not aligned, but they're not. So good morning, F, and welcome to the live stream. And let's start off with Bremont. Now, I can't tell. I'm sure I've talked about Bremont before, but I can't tell you the last time that I did. It's just not a brand that I ever really look at, even though I think they have some perfectly handsome pieces, if maybe familiar looking to, but especially when we're talking dive watches. I mean, how many different looks are we really going to get? You start, I think, if you're me at least, you start with a breakdown of do we have an exterior, rotating bezel, or an interior, and then we go from there. But of course, most watch brands use exterior, so that segregation doesn't get you very different other than like the Polaris and stuff from the get-go. But anyway, so this is, again, as I always do, link in the video description so you can read this article. This one is through Monochrome. They have a piece about the new 3 watches that have come out as a limited series that's in partnership with the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, which I know nothing about because I'm American that doesn't know anything about any other country. But the watches are interesting, or at least they caught my eye because, hey, radial, we got sunburst dials. So how could I not? And they're blue, which everyone else will like. So I like blue too. I just don't ever really buy very much. Oh, didn't come in my. Today on the wrist is the Spiro Agnew, former Vice President of the United States, watch from the Dirty Time Company. And the reason why I'm wearing it is, one, because it is a pin lever escapement. I like to get it running every once in a while just so that it stays working, because I paid well over the value of a watch to get a watchmaker to get it to work, because I could not after disassembling it and working on it myself. And this actually is the last watch in my collection that I had not worn in 2024. So I'm keeping I mentioned this, I think, on the last live stream, but I'm keeping a spreadsheet now where I can log what watch I wore for the day. If I don't usually wear more than one watch a day, but I can always add the date again if I want to. And that way, when I do at the end of the year, kind of like I did in 2023, I'll plan to do probably at the start of next year, honestly, since I'm doing it so scientifically now. But I'm keeping, a graph, a chart, all of that sort of information logged. So I actually have a scientific measurement, because when I picked my top 5 watches I wore, that's what I think I did. And I'm assuming I was pretty close. But did I really wear the G-Shock more than I wore some other, I don't know. So I'm like, let's just start counting it. Let's just literally count it. There's no reason not. I think there's an app for iPhones that can do that. There is not, that I could find on Android, which is what I use. So anyway, so I do it at home on a spreadsheet on a desktop, which has nothing to do with this other than we're going to go ahead and move into it. So there are 3 watches. They're each limited to 200 pieces. And so let's go ahead and walk through them really quick. The first 2 kind of look similar. I think we scroll down a bit, you can start diving. That's so funny. All right, diving into them. So first we've got the S500 RNLI. So this one is, I guess it's based off of they describe it in the article as a variant of the S500. So this is the deep dive one. This is a 500-meter water resistance watch. It has a helium escape valve. It's 43 millimeters in diameter. You'll notice in the photo here, the crown placement is towards the 2 o'clock not at the traditional 3 o'clock position. So that's probably the biggest visual change up you will see with this versus the next one that we will cover, because the helium escape valve appears to be flush. I can't see it, at least from the shot. And so, that's the main thing. We got the lollipop second sand style, which I've always been kind of partial to. I like that. And it also has a date at the 3 o'clock position. So there's a little zoom in for you on it. Overall, I think, like I noted before, relatively handsome piece. Maybe would have used personally a different handset, but I don't dislike the handset. Aside from the lollipop, I like the lollipop, but everything else about it really clean, really easy to use. So legibility is great, but as you would expect with a 500-meter watch, this is not slim. I think they have quick facts here that'll tell you. Now it's powered by their BE36AE. That's based off of an ETA, though, chronometer certified ETA, but you're going to get that standardized 38-hour power reserve of like anyone who uses a 28 whatever from ETA. So anyway, and of course, bezel does rotate. So in terms of thickness, did they note? I think they note it in the next one. It's thick though. It is. Gosh, where is the notation, guys? Where's the notation? See, they had it in the next article. Shouldn't have done it this way. Monochrome, learn. 16.5 millimeters. So this is not a thin watch, but it is a watch. So anyway, all right. It looks different, obviously, with the crown placement and such. So someone who kind of likes a traditional style, likes this colorway, maybe this appeals just because it's a little unique in that regard. I, of course, unsurprisingly, drawn more to the more traditional one because I'm a little more boring individual. So that's the Bremont S300 RNLI. Now this one is smaller; it's 40 millimeters. It has less water resistance as well for that. It's 300 meters, so still quite hefty. No helium escape valve at all. Traditional crown placement at the 3 o'clock position. Once again, we do have the 3 o'clock at the date aperture, so you're able to tell that. Handset's the same, lollipop, all the rest. So basically, it's a normal looking case with the same color scheme, same handset, and less depth. I should go ahead and note on pricing, the one we just discussed, it depends if you want to talk about it on strap or bracelet. These are, because it's British brand, is going to be in British pounds. So it's 4,200 pounds on bracelet. It's 3,800 on the rubber strap. This smaller one is 3,700 pounds on bracelet, 3,300 on strap. 38 hours of power reserve once more. And then the third and final one as part of this RNLI collaboration is the Solo 34. So this is not a dive looking watch, though it does have 100 meters of water resistance. So it would be for most people as an everyday wearer would be very, very comfortable. The issue is it's 34 millimeters in diameter. So that's going to put off a lot of people anyway. As you can see, it has a polished bezel approach. Error in the article. They say elegant Roman numerals at 3, 6, and 9. It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure those are Arabic numerals. And not Eastern Arabic. Sometimes when people talk about Arabic dials, they mean Eastern Arabic, whereas the numbers we all normally use are Arabic numerals. But anyway, so you've got those. I actually like these numerals quite a bit. These 3, 6, and 9. Very elegant. I like the other indices. Date aperture once again, but this time moved down to the 6 o'clock position. And you can see we don't have any lollipopping going on. We've got the leaf style handset and more of a stick style second hand. So anyway, so very different looking, but it's not a dive watch in the sense that the other two were. Cheapest watch of the set. It is available. You see the picture on leather, but it is available on steel for 3,400 pounds. It's 3,200 if you want it on leather strap. So I do think they do have a photo here of the case back, the closed case back of this watch. There you go. In case you're curious. So anyway, so some of the brand, at least on the dive ones, I think they're closed on all of them. But I like the colorways. On all of them. The 34, I had a 34 millimeter Oyster Perpetual once, and it was super comfortable. That was a prior gen one that wore more like a 35, but I always felt it was a little small. So I think, I wouldn't go for the 34. I think a lot of people would have trouble. At least a lot of men would probably be uncomfortable going below 36, especially if they couldn't try it on first. So I'd pick the middle one, sort of the Goldilocks principle with the traditional look and the 300 meters of water resistance. If I was to go for this, the thing is, uh, like, they don't look different enough for me. Like, you can get, like, if I wanted a sunburst dial dive watch, I could like pay half this and get a Zodiac. So that's kind of where I end up. Uh, Plus the movement choice that they've gone with and 38 hours of power reserve is definitely not a selling point for modern watches. So especially at this price point, where on the big one you're pushing close to 4,000 pounds, which that ain't cheap. That is not a cheap dollar amount. So I think they're attractive, but given the pricing, I think they're a miss. But they are limited, and maybe some people who are really big fans of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution might want to pull the trigger on that. But it is what it is. So let's go ahead and catch back up with chat because I see some of you guys have been saying things while I've been talking. So, Prechu, good morning, everyone. And hey, welcome to the live stream. Tuna says he can't really gel with Bremont, supposedly made in Britain, but I seriously wonder. And as I recall, Tuna is in Britain, so that would be of more value to him than perhaps some others. We've kind of run into the same thing here in the US with US manufacturers. Almost none of them can label as made in the USA on the watches. And I think that puts a lot of people off. Now, part of that, now, I shouldn't even say part of that. A lot of that is it is so much easier to be able to say Swiss made than it is to be able to say USA made, because like in Switzerland, it's like y'all might know the rule better than me, but I think it's something like 60% of the value in the watch needs to have been made in Switzerland. In the US, it's like 97%. It's a very aggressive standard. And it's just when it's so difficult, we just don't have the manufacturing capabilities anymore to do at mass scale any of the intricate stuff like the hair springs and all the stuff that goes into the movement. It's like, unless we choose to develop that or an independent chooses to figure out a way, and then they have really high costs, we can't brand things as made in the USA. So that's why you have companies like Shinola, which will say like made in Detroit or something, or put Detroit, or they used to. They couldn't call it made in the USA though. So yeah, it might be similar there. I don't know what the standards. These all. Let me put it back on the screen. You probably can't see it here. I'll go to another image, but I think they just say London. Yeah. See, they just say London at the bottom instead of saying like made in anywhere. It's branded London. Doesn't tell you it's made in London. It just says London. There's a reason for that. Let's see. What else are we going through here? Koji says, I prefer Smiths and Fiers if we're talking UK watches. I've heard a lot of good things about Fiers. I've looked at Smiths before. I've never really found one that resonated with me personally, but everyone's mileage may vary, and that is the fun of watches. Tuna notes that he feels for what they are. Bremont is overpriced. I would agree just going through these. I get that they're limited to 200. I don't care about the limited status. It's too much of a gamble if you're going to be able to flip things just because they're limited. I'll look at Seiko and even that very successful, heritage reissue of the essentially first Seiko 5 at 15,000 plus units. You can now readily, I'm now seeing those cheaper than they are sold on the Seiko site available elsewhere through dealers. So as I said, but you all, maybe not you all specifically, but you all over there in the comment section said I was wrong and they were going to sell out of those. No, you guys have lost the plot if you think 15,000 is minimal. I don't care how cheap Seiko is. There are not that many people that want it. It's a cool watch, though. Neff has commented, if you told me Orient made these watches, I wouldn't argue with you. Another nondescript diver. And maybe that's why I like them aesthetically, because I do have an Orient nondescript diver. I have one of their Cano line. And we've got T-Looks is here in the live stream. Welcome to the live stream, by the way. A few years back, certain watch companies were bought, like Bulova and Glycine. Could any others may be acquired by a bigger company? Will Swatch buy another company? Could any micro brands be bought? Wow. You always ask the deep questions, if I recall. So, because I think this is the chat can weigh in on this because they'll probably have their own thoughts. The short answer is yes. Could any of these companies do something like that? Absolutely. And we just saw Breitling do it by going public just a few weeks ago, in fact, with the news that they had acquired Universal Genève, which has been relatively defunct for a while, but it still costs them a very pretty penny to obtain because the brand was owned by someone that did temporarily try and do something with the watches. So yes, I think a bigger brand getting a micro brand, they would feel compelled to do it if the micro brands started to have a lot of success. That's kind of what happened with Movement, the MVMT, which basically made cheap fashion watches, but a bigger company ended up buying them because they were selling so many. So it just kind of made sense to go ahead and absorb them. I don't think this is the year that we likely see any of that because I don't think any micro brands are really going to break through this year in a way that a larger company is going to think it's going to make good financial sense to acquire. But I'm assuming that 2024 is going to be a relatively cool watch market period. I'm not saying that it's going to bottom out more than it already has. Is it our price is going to drop more than they're at currently? I heard there was, I haven't gone through all the watch charts data. I heard there was a slight uptick in December, but for Christmas shopping, I don't think that's surprising. My opinion is maybe some of the hype pieces, we might still see some decline on some of the stainless steel Rolex, for example. I think a lot of the other brands have probably relatively bottomed out, like the ones that weren't hype in the first place, like what Breguet or Moser or a lot of the catalog of Panerai and Omega. I think maybe those whatever drop we saw on those is probably where they're at. But we'll still maintain, I think, the situation where most watches will now trade for less used than new, which is how it's supposed to be. They're not investments. There might be some watches that can be investments, but as a category, watches are not inherently investments, in my opinion. But I'm not a financial advisor. Don't take anything I say as financial advice. If I was going to look at a micro brand that might get picked up by someone, I would start to think maybe Studio Underdog. I would have thought it better if their newest release had the same positive reception of their prior release. But I'm not sure that the owner of Studio Underdog would want to be acquired. So it may be moot. We might see another move, like maybe a company will finally buy Ming. That might be a move that we see because they've kind of carved out their niche and they're trading at a higher dollar level. So a lot of the luxury brands might be interested in them. I think it's more likely from LVMH than anyone else. And then maybe Richemont and Swatch Group would probably be my last one to expect to do an acquisition. But those again are pretty much just blind guesses. Pre2 says, true, the designs of these remind me of the Casio Duro. I'm going to throw these back up so people can see what he was talking about. Koji says, I rather like that RNLI. The 34 millimeter is in my wheelhouse. Numerals look a bit too large in proportions to the dial, though. They are pretty glaring. I like that style, though, because that's how the Arabic numerals on the bronze versions of the Tudor Black Bays are, and I really like how that style is. I don't know why, but it's kind of weird because like the Rolex Explorer and that style of field watch in general doesn't appeal to me, but you artsy it up like this a little bit, you put a little serifs on your fonts and all of a sudden I'm like, what? That looks pretty good. So actually as a dial goes, this is my favorite. I agree with him not doing I prefer a lollipop as a versus a stick, but not for a watch like this. The lollipop would be too playful. So anyway, just one of those things. Tuna laughs and says some of the efforts from Orient look quite nice, and I think those are the main elements to catch up on. So let's jump to the next watch. So let's move up market. Yes, Bremont was not cheap, but we'll move up market and let's talk about another limited edition because we got to have limited editions, folks. So Moser, H. Moser and company have released a new Streamliner tourbillon. This one in Wyoming Jade, or I should say the dial is in Wyoming Jade. So for those that are not familiar with the Streamliner, this is the integrated sports watch that Moser does. It's interesting. I don't dislike it. Some people love it. What I like about it is it looks very in my opinion, you look at a Streamliner and I don't get any Genta vibes whatsoever out of it. So if you wanted to make an integrated sports watch that didn't feel like you were stealing from Gerald Genta, Moser did it. But it looks weird to me too. So part of it is I think the case shape, the general shape without having the flanges or anything. So it doesn't look like a Nautilus, but the shape kind of reminds me of that 70s Nautilus look. And as I've noted many times on this channel, I have not been able to get behind the Nautilus. I don't like the shape of it. I find it very unattractive and very a very kitsch looking watch. Whereas, while I don't love the Royal Oak, it definitely has grown on me to an extent that I don't have that same. It feels more timeless, I guess, is the long story. But obviously, people out there do not agree with me, given how popular those Nautilus watches are. So, again, part of the fun of the watches. So, anyway, so this iteration is it's got their 60-second tourbillon. They're using I think they have a picture of the jade and them cutting the jade here. We'll zoom in a little bit. So they're carving the dials out of jade, which actually as a stone is I don't own anything jade. I've always liked it. I typically associate it with certain jewelry, especially like East Asian jewelry and such. Uh, and a little more milky than what this is. Maybe that's why they're specifying it's Wyoming jade. Is maybe it has a different kind of visual property aesthetically. But and of course it comes from Wyoming, so that's not a surprise. But other than that, it's a limited run. The case is gold, 18 karat gold. So and as usual, we got the I don't think this is a zoom in. Oh, it is. Okay, good. As usual, nicely decorated movement by Moser. This is standard for them. 120 meters of water resistance, standard for them as well. Like their Pioneer line's also 120 meters of water resistance. 100-piece limited run. Very expensive. Absolutely. It is six figures. Yes, 109,000 Swiss francs. So I haven't done the conversion. It's going to be over over $115,000 US. This franc is so strong against the dollar right now. So anyway, very, very expensive. Right in line with Moser for something that's probably relatively polarizing. I think it's an interesting watch, so I wanted to talk about it. I don't like it. So if this was if I was looking for a Moser, I don't like it for a lot of reasons. One, I'm not into the tourbillon. I've talked about that before. As cool as it is to watch them move, the uselessness of it still frustrates me to no end. Um, I don't really like the limited indices that we get, which is something that Moser does on some of their watches. At least it has indices, so kudos to that. But again, I don't like the route of the fashion watch where you can't tell the time at a glance. It starts to alienate me a little bit. Don't really care for the green against this gold. I don't think it's a particularly good match. I don't know. I don't think it's bad, but it does not. I don't think it looks attractive. I won't say it's ugly. I just don't think it's attractive either. I just think it is what it is. And with like this extended lume apertures that they have on the streamliners, I think that it looks weird with this gold. That's probably part of it too. So anyway, it just looks like a mishmash to me. As cool as it is for stone cut dials, and I do think they are very cool. And as elegant as it is, and as unique as the streamliner is as an integrated watch, there's basically nothing about this that I like other than the movement. It's 12.1 millimeters thick and 40 millimeters in diameter, if you were curious, which that's pretty wearable. Yeah, Mosers tend to run big, so this isn't too bad. But this, yeah, okay, so they're noting in the article, incidentally, it's 5N red gold, which has got more copper in it to give it kind of that even redder look than we might normally think of with rose gold. I don't think even like straight up rose gold with this dial. I don't. There's no iteration of it that I think works. So some of this is I just don't care for the streamliner very much as a watch. It just doesn't really speak to me. I don't think the color combinations are very attractive here. I don't like how hard it is to tell the time, and tourbillon is useless. So other than that, it's cool that they cut stone and the nice looking Moser movement, which you can get on a lot cheaper watch like that. It was like the same movement in the Pioneers. Doesn't work for me, but it's a new release and it might work for some of you. So I'm going to talk at least a little bit about it. So let's talk about what you guys are talking about on it. Those of you watching live. Tuna says, of course, Moser I will say it properly. I will try again. Of course, Moser is exquisite, but I'm not sure that this one is worth the coin. Moser, very polarizing. I like some people love their Vanta Black. Vanta Black's kind of cool, but I don't. Most of the way they use it in the watches, I don't like. But I love almost all of their Pioneers. The Mad Red. I have a funky blue. I like the Royal Blue. That might be my least favorite. I like that Arctic Cool Blue. That's probably my favorite one. As just a dial in and of itself. Anyway, they got a lot of really cool things, but they also go out on a limb a lot, which I respect, but I can't pretend I like it when I don't. So we have to call it out when we think it may be a miss. And in this case, I don't think so. But it's only 100 pieces. So they're probably not too worried. Preacher says, is the gold case and bracelet with green dial the new trend? I hope not. We'll have to see what the other companies do. I think for Moser, no. I think this is just one of their many experiments. And if there's interest here, maybe they'll say, all right, let's do an onyx dial and let's do, I kind of feel like when you start getting into stone stuff too much, it starts to feel like what Hublot used to be, right? They were known for using exotic materials in their watches. The world could use more stone cut watches. And you know what? I think jade could work. I just wouldn't have done it in gold. But I still wouldn't have liked it even in stainless steel just because of the streamliner. Speaking of which, Neff says, I'm not a fan of the streamliner. Moser is kind of a wash, rinse, repeating with their releases lately, getting a bit stale. Yeah, I think part of it is the difficulty in wanting to, as small as they are, they turn out, I've read, around, at this point, I think it's around 3,000 watches a year. So there are only so many cases, or what you'll often hear me, especially when I talk about Audemars Piguet, I'll say skeletons. There are only so many skeletons that they want to build on. So it was kind of like a big deal to them when they, what was it, a year or two? I think it was 2 years ago where they came out with a slightly smaller Pioneer case, but I mean, slightly smaller. It's like instead of being 43 millimeters, like 41 millimeters. And it's like, I think it was a good move for them to make it smaller because one of the biggest things that put people off of Moser is they'll read the sizes and they're like, this is really big. And a lot of what they do is really big. I mean, again, I think they're very wearable and they're meant to wear big. Some watches are okay big. And I have a Pioneer, one of the traditional sized ones. But with the dome and everything else on it, I cannot wear that with certain shirts. So it's and I bought it knowing it'd be a casual watch, but it does limit itself more than another brand probably would have. So I think they're a little slow on changing, but given the volume of sales, I'm not surprised because they don't want to constantly retool. So I think you're right, Neff, but they're sort of a victim of their size in that regard. Brand Headlights, welcome to Livestream, says, should have had a micro rotor. Again, they just don't want to come up with a new movement. They want to reuse the old movement. So they could have gotten some thickness down on these watches if they've gone the route of the micro rotor, but I'm not aware of them having done any of that yet. Scott, welcome to the live stream, man. Thank you for being a 99-cent club member. That is appreciated. Notes, I believe the conversion, which would be 126,000 US. What did I estimate? About a little over 120? Okay, I wasn't too far off. Scott says, I am a fan of stone cut dials, but this isn't working for me either. And Koji notes, finally got to see the Vanta Black Moser with the tourbillon in person recently. It is pretty damn cool, I must admit. Vanta Black, because photos will never show it right because your screen is projecting the image. You don't understand how absorptive, non-reflective, let's put it that way, how non-reflective Vanta Black is. It is the darkest known black that has ever been created. There is a fascinating story about the artist who created it and what an incredibly not nice person he is. So there actually is another. Also, Vanta Black as a paint is incredibly toxic. So FYI, there's another black that is like, I think it's called Blackest Black. It's not quite as black as Vanta, but you don't like have to pay this big proprietary thing to access Vanta Black. Like some of that's market. There's another black that's anyway. It could be done cheaper. Is my long story short. But yes, I've heard it is extremely almost disconcerting because it's just light, just almost at all isn't escaping from it. It's very, very cool technology. Speaking of cool technologies, we got to talk about Hermés, right? I think that's how I'm supposed to say it, Hermés. Now, you thought I couldn't say the name of Hermès right. Watch me try and pronounce the name of this watch. I should just say the Celestial Dial Hermès, and that's probably what I'll say moving forward. But I feel I have a moral obligation to you all, or at least an entertainment obligation, to try and say the watch. So this is the Hermès Arcu Petite Lune Ciel Étoile. That's probably all wrong, but that's what I'm going to try. I put this one in here because a lot of people really like adventuring glass dials or dials that are adventuring-esque, even if they're not made out of adventuring glass. And interesting aside, interesting, I suppose, only to me, I don't care for adventuring. I've looked at several, and you can and adventuring can be at pretty approachable price points. It just doesn't click for me. Every time I look at it, I'm like, it's nice. And then I think, I don't want it on watch. I don't know. But I know a lot of people do. So we're going to talk about this one. Now, this is not adventuring. This is not adventuring glass. This is not even trying to be adventuring. The speckling in the glass is random. This seems very, as you see this image, very, very much by design. But there's some very interesting elements here. Of course, classic, look, we've got our leaf hands. You got this bedazzled bezel for people. You've got the bedazzled diamonds on the dial for what appear to be trying to be a constellation, maybe. I don't know. And then you've got the smaller, what appear to be applied little dots. Can't tell the time, so I would hate the watch anyway. But I do like what they did with the blue. So this, it's not fume, but they've clearly altered the shades of the blue throughout the dial, but not in a fume. It's not in a discernible pattern to me. It does seem to be somewhat just darker towards the edge, but and again, lighting can throw some of these things off. This actually is not a small watch. This is 38 millimeters, so pretty sizable. But I think the way they went about doing the dial, while I wouldn't wear it, very, very cool effect. And I like the moon phase application here. Very much reminds me of something that Glashütte Original would do. So interesting lug approach, something that Hermès has done before, but and a very nicely decorated movement. Now, this is from the Voucher manufacturer. They're the same movement maker that supplies Parmigiani Fleurier, and that's because Hermès owns a stake in that movement manufacturer, as does the company that owns that movement manufacturer owns Parmigiani. And to tie a bow on all of that talk, Hermès, which is known for making leather goods, supplies the straps for, obviously they do their own strap here. They supply the straps for Parmigiani Fleurier as well. So there's a lot of kind of commingling, more than you might think when you hear the names, because it sounds like, oh, well, that's a separate, like they're using a third-party manufacturer, and Hermès is by itself, and then you've got Parmigiani over doing something else. And I always thought it was kind of neat how they on the Hermès movements, they put in little H's everywhere. Just nice little touch. Hermès is one of those fashion houses that actually has been getting a lot of props for their watchmaking. Like the way they're doing the watches is not the Versace with the horrid garish watches, like total fashion watches. Also, you see all the little diamonds and everything else, and you might think, oh gosh, is this going to be priced around the Moser? No, it's not at all. It's actually about 16,000 Swiss francs. So much more expensive, very much expensive. But this is a watch that's residing very much in the space around where you would expect a Moser Pioneer to be at. Now, a lot of that's going to be, obviously, it's a stainless steel watch. As I told you, it is 38 millimeters in diameter, 70 brilliant cut diamonds in the bezel. And the crown is set with a diamond as well, as I go over these basic specs. Gradient mother of pearl is how they describe the dial, with a blue lacquer. And they put 7 diamonds on the dial as well. And the H1837 is what powers this watch. 42-hour power reserve, 4 hertz. So, alligator strap. So anyway, there you go. I just thought, it's still not for me, but I like that it's not adventuring. But if you're like someone who worships the moon phase, having this watch might be up your alley. I mean, it's weird because it's very jeweled out, but when I glance at it, it doesn't, maybe because they're all just like plain white stones, it doesn't come across as particularly garish. Blingy, definitely, but not overly garish. But I can't tell the time at a glance with it, so it's still way too fashion watch for me. But anyway, it was a new release, so I wanted to talk a little bit about it. Pre-2 notes, fun fact, the inventor of Vantablack also made Pincus Pink. I did not know that. I've heard of Pincus Pink, but I did not know that. Tuna says, surprisingly, Hermès offers some incredible watches. They are really trying. It's kind of like Montblanc, the brand known for ink pens. Montblanc actually has a lot. Now, They have some very approachable watches, but they own the Minerva factory, and especially what they have the Minerva Group do for them, extremely high quality watchmaking. There are so I know some people that that will have a general rule of if it's not a watch brand first and foremost, they won't buy a watch from the company. And in a lot of instances, that can keep you safe. But there are some companies that have are better known for not their watches. Cartier is probably the best case in point. They are by far more known for their jewelry than their watches, but they do make some very nice watches. And yes, some of them use third party movements, and sometimes they go in and do the like the Mont Blanc Minerva thing, and or they'll do something in house, and it'll be far more expensive. But what I like about fashion houses, and as someone you see me in my Stern pinball T-shirt, who does nothing, knows nothing, and is not really into fashion at all. I just like watches. But what I've noticed is when I see a brand like Cartier that maybe is known for doing something else that's in that kind of fashiony space, sometimes they're far more creative. Like they take more chances. We were talking earlier with the live chat about Moser and how Moser is using a lot of the same stuff over and over and over and just kind of like changing the colors up. Grand Seiko is another good example of that. In the case of Moser, as we talked about, I think a lot of it is financial and how few watches they make. And so they can't be going out there changing the bones of which they build everything on every single time. Grand Seiko, very different boat, sell a lot of watches. And I think with them, they want to apply this assembly line mentality to their watches. And that means they need to all look alike and they just need to keep changing the dials because how else is the assembly line supposed to assemble if you're constantly changing the sizes and shapes of your watches? Um, and that's why I think Grand Seiko, if you start exploring their catalog very closely and you load them up section by section, you will get a very oh, yes. No, this is just like going to the Toyota lot and saying you want a Corolla and they got 8 of them, 8 different colors, but the insides are all the same. It's like that, which makes sense from a financial, construction perspective. But that's also why a lot of people don't want 5 different Grand Seikos and maybe don't want 5 different Mosers, which is just as well because both of those watches will end up costing you quite a bit of money over time. Scotty Pinball, welcome to the live stream, by the way. Stern t-shirt is high fashion. Well, thank you, but that's not why I got it. I got it to show this was back when things were tough. Well, all right, they weren't that tough back when I bought this shirt. I actually had this shirt for years and years. I think I got this around when I got my Star Trek pinball machine, which must have been 2015. So this shirt's lived about a decade and hasn't gotten any. As soon as a little hole appears in a shirt, the shirt goes in the trash. That is my shirt rule. I encourage you all to have a shirt rule. Don't let shirts last forever, guys. There comes a point where we must say goodbye to everything. And we are going to say goodbye to Hermés. Let's talk about Longines. My favorite watch designs overall from a brand I have never owned ever. Maybe I should, and I don't actively look for Longines watches. Maybe I should start. I'm going to just open with saying I like how this watch looks a lot. But anyway, this is a hands-on where I actually have a couple other tabs open. Again, the hands-on is what's linked from a blog to watch in my video description. But I actually have a couple of non-linked things I'm going to jump to over at the Longines site. Link to the Longines site for this watch is in the article. So you can get to it, or you can just search Longines. It's not hard. You can just type it in. But anyway, so this is their Heritage Conquest Central Power Reserve watch. I love it for a couple of reasons. One, and we'll go into some photos here closely to talk about, but is this late 50s aesthetic. Again, it is a heritage piece. It's what you'd expect. And you all know me. I lean to these more heritage conservative designs by and large versus avant-garde stuff. It varies, but I always just have this instinctive desire to the symmetry of pieces, and symmetry was very important back then. So there's that. But the power reserve, as you've heard, central power reserve, it's very, very interesting. So here is a close-up of this watch. Well, I thought it was a close-up. All right, there's a crown. Just go through some photos real quick. All right, here we go. This is a better example. So hours, minute hand, second hand, all the sort of gilt style applied indices, date aperture at the 12, symmetrical, but different. I like it. And here in the center, this is the power reserve. And that is why I have this loaded up. This is a hands-on. So you saw this version. They have two other colorways. They have the black with silver indices, and they have this charcoal gray. This is probably I like both these two the best. This is my least favorite because it's the most traditional. But with like this rose gold gilt style on charcoal, I think that's extremely attractive if you want a dark watch. And this more champagne looking style is nice if you like a light looking watch. This is how the power reserve works, though. And that's what I wanted. That's why I had to have this loaded up for you so you could see this watch actually in action. So as you wind the watch, you will actually see the disc of the power wheel instead of a hand. A disc of the power wheel spins in the center and then slowly unwinds as the power unwinds from the watch. It's the idea is simple in and of itself, but I find it incredibly cool. Incredibly cool. Now, problem. It's a Longines. So this 38 millimeter watch, it's 12.3 millimeters thick because Longines cannot do anything thin. They're worse than Omega, I think, at this point. I judge Omega harsher because they have more money to work with. But all right, so 12.3 is wearable, definitely wearable. That's well under what most dive watches would be. But for a dress watch, it is still pretty thick. It doesn't have a micro rotor, but it is an automatic. So obviously that's going to be part of that. Here's a close up. Reasonably attractive movement. Again, kind of what I expect out of Longines. But that dial looks super clean. I really like this dial. So I like a lot about this watch, except the price. The prices are not inexpensive. These are all 3,800 US dollars. So I love the dial, but at $3,800, this watch is going in to a place where there's a lot of competition. And, you're talking about a lot of tutors are in this space and all the rest of it. So I don't know so much about it, though. I would be really interested to just actually see this watch in a precious metal and thinner and kind of put it like micro rotor it or hand wind only it, get that size down closer to 10 millimeters, throw it in white gold, have a steel version too. That's fine. But, and just kind of be like, yeah, this is the dressier of the dressy. But anyway, a lot of really nice hands-on photos from a vlog to watch, which is why I went ahead and linked it. But, $3,800, very pretty penny to pay for a power reserve date. It's a time plus date watch with a power reserve on it, but it's a steel watch. So there's not. It's cool though. It's super cool. This might be one that I watch for gray. That I watch for once it hits the gray market, because they got 3 different lines of it. I think they're going to overproduce these, so that's my hope. But actually, yeah, I think it's really, and it's not Cusk certified. The one that they sent to the media measured within Cusk standard, but it is not. And again, at 3,800, they should have certified it, in my opinion. I don't think most people will care too much in the dress watch space. That's often not a big deal, but I think it's. I always think it's something. I think they should care. That's kind of my thought. Anyway, I'll put this back on a little video while I catch up on your guys' chat comments. So Tuna says, I really like this design. Yes, I do too. I like practically, other than the price and okay, the thickness it's wearable, but I'm still going to judge it a little bit. Other than those two things, I like it a whole lot. Neff says the one Longines I want is basically impossible to find. A 38.5 millimeter record or is it record? I'm going to say record. With Roman numerals. It exists, just don't know where to buy it. This is okay, not for me. So you see, we all have these different pools. And my understanding is this heritage is based on a 1959 design. So that's why you have that late 50s aesthetic. Brand Headlights, welcome to the live stream. If I didn't say it already, I can't remember anymore because I've said hello to so many people. Great dial. Now, if it had a matching great movement, it would really make people look at the brand. The way the dial shows the power reserve is very clever and useful and clear to read. It's kind of like, well, I don't, because of the cathedral hands, though they have on their, especially on their new movements, they're not doing the cathedral hands on all of them anymore. But the Oris Big Crown Date, like and I saw a repair, I can't remember, I think it was Wristwatch Revival, good channel, did a repair or servicing of a Big Crown Date Oris, and it was really neat because they have the disc for the date disc, and it just has a little prong that sticks up, and that's what pushes against another piece that allows them to have another hand for the pointer date. Super easy to read, super easy to implement, but a very, very cool complication that you don't see very much. That's very legible. So that's kind of like here with a power reserve. Instead of using a hand, they're just like, let's just spin a disc. We'll just spin a disc, right? But it's like the same tech underneath, basically. But it's such a cool new way to deliver the concept that I think it's it just feels fresh. So there's a good example of something that's just really interesting. So my hat's off to Longines for doing it. I don't care if it was easy to do that it just feels so cool and definitely different than what we see out of almost everyone else. That's what I think is exciting. Tuna says it does seem rather expensive for a Longines. Yes. And I had a discussion, I think, maybe in some comments. Maybe it was I can't remember if it was on our Discord or on some comments on a reply to someone. But yeah, the kind of vibe that, you know what, Longines does feel like they're kind of Swatch is pushing them more up market. And I don't know if that's they want them to be the competitor to Tudor because they're insisting that Omega is going to compete with Rolex. So we're seeing all these Omega price increases to match where the average price point is on stainless steels Rolex. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're trying to move it up market and maybe say, you know what, that's where like Tissot is going to take the old Longines space. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. I don't know, but I agree. It does seem like that they're moving up the price more and more on the Longines watches. Brand Headlight says price is quite a bit high considering the movement and the thickness. Yeah, and that's a problem I've had with a lot of last year's Longines releases. Very attractive watches. By and large, to me, I liked almost all of them. Thickness was a super serious problem. And the reason why, and all of those were like GMT complications and flyback and all that. So the thing is, because of Longines and where they are on the price point, it's a module company. They throw modules on these movements to get all these fancy things to work, and it just adds to the thickness. And I'm glad that they're willing to get interesting complications in play in their brand, even at their higher price point. But at some point, you need to quit doing like the modules, the thickness. If you could hide the thickness, like if it's going to be a dive watch anyway, and so it was already going to be thick, that's one thing. But when you take dress watches and you start saying it's not a GMT watch, it's date, it's not got an annual calendar, it's not got a big date or any, and it's like we're just gonna be thick. This isn't too bad, but like the GMT stuff in particular, like 17 millimeters, I think was one of them was on thickness. That's thicker than the Hamilton Valjoux 77 5X based movement I had in a watch was. That thing was so ridiculously thick that I couldn't keep it. It was way too top heavy. Anyway, I'm whining, as I want to do on these live streams. I'm whining. Neff says Longines makes some very thin dress watches in their flagship range. Time and date, auto, 8 millimeters thick. Add complications though, and they balloon. Yeah, it's the modules. That's the thing, Nev. And it's a good point. Longines isn't. That's why I've generally been harsher on Omega because they went coaxial on everything, and it put everything. Even their hand wind stuff is over 10 millimeters. Maybe they still have some ladies' watches, some quartz ones, maybe that are under 10. But any watch they brand as men's is over 10 now, including hand wind. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not the third-party movement's fault. Tudor, the 1926, it's a slightly modified, it used to be the ETA, but now it's a slightly modified Solita movement. Those things are like around 9 millimeters thick, automatic, not micro rotor. You can do it. As Neff noted, Longines does it. You don't have to be over 10 millimeters thick if you don't want to be. And if you're adding complications, maybe you need to go up a little bit. And maybe you need to ask yourself, should I consider a micro rotor? Or ask yourself, should I consider hand wind? I mean, to me, it's power reserve makes the most sense on a hand wind watch anyway. So I don't know. But if they were going to make it any thinner just by getting rid of the rotor, then might as well include it, I suppose. Tuna says, my Longines presence is pretty thin. And Neff says, I wish brands made more modular chronos. They are almost all thinner than any 7750 variant. You can use a thin base and put a module on top and still only be 11 or 12 millimeters. Well, in that case, yeah, I would be accepting. I basically want all of Valjoux stuff retired permanently. I I don't I just have had bad experiences with it. And Koji's already warning, don't get me started on 77. It's a crap movement, guys. It's a crap movement. It's too thick. It breaks too easy. It should have been retired 20 years ago. Why are we still using it? I don't know. But what I do know is we're going to go to our last watch set, another set of 3, just like with Bremont, that I want to talk about. Another brand that I don't really like very much, but I like to talk about them because they're interesting. It just generally the designs don't work very well for me. But in this case, I actually these in the kind of Calatrava-esque. It's not so Bauhaus. It's a little more. It's a little more marked up in a way that I don't know. Everything it's hit or miss. I try and put things in buckets to make them make sense to me, and sometimes the buckets work, and sometimes the buckets don't work and they overflow. But we have 3 new Nomos Orion Neomatic watches. These are actually don't these are all 3 different sizes, by the way. So we're gonna try and walk through. This is a Fratello article, again, link in the video description. So we're gonna go chunk by chunk. But again, uh, one of the things I like about Nomos is they have some decent movement decoration, at least on par with Omega. Actually, I think the Nomos does a better job on movement decoration. So all 3 of these have display case specs, so you can admire all of that. And we've got 3 different things going on. So the first one is their reference 396. This is a just over 36, what is it? 36.4 millimeter watch, 45 millimeter lug to lug, 8.5 millimeters in thickness, and it's 35, almost 3,600 US dollars, or in euros, it's 3,050. Okay. It is 50 meters of water resistance, 3 hertz, using the caliber 3001. And these are all automatic watches. So again, as a case in point from our prior discussion, like with what Neff pointed out with Longines, here you go. Nomos is sitting here saying for less money than the Longines we just talked about, which was 3,800 US, this is 3,580. This is 8.5 millimeters thick. So anyway, and 43 hours power reserve. So this slightly over 36 millimeter version, you can see I think the thing that bugs me with a lot of these watches, as I looked at this morning when I was getting ready, prepping my notes for our discussion, it's the handset. I don't like the handset on this watch. Other than that, I like pretty much everything else about it. It's very Calatrava-esque, which I like. No, I'm not a fan of the fact that they use 3 different fonts on the freaking 12 o'clock position, like Nomos, then Glashütte, and then Neomatic. I think all 3 of those are in a different font. That doesn't really resonate well with me, but again, it is what it is. But otherwise, yeah, I like it. So anyway, so that's the smallest one. No date. That's important because we will see one with a date later. So you've got that approach. Okay. The strap they're using Cordovan leather on the inside. That's an interesting choice. I don't because it's kind of I don't know. Some people might not like that very much. I don't mind it, but it's not like my favorite approach for straps. So we have that. Okay. Then at 3,180 euro, or 3,200 euro, or 4,000 US dollars, or more like 3,900, 3,920 is their 39. The 39 isn't actually 39 millimeters. It's 38.5. One of my favorite dress watch sizes, though, is 38.5. That my dress watch space that I tend to gravitate towards is 38 to 40, but 38.5. Longines does a lot of 38.5 for a reason. It's a very popular size for dress watches. 47.5 millimeter lug to lug, so not much longer and not much thicker either. This one's 8.7 instead of 8.5. Again, it's still automatic. Very much similar design to the other one, just a little bit bigger. Again, I don't care for the fonts. I'm not a huge fan of the hour minute handset, but by and large, this is one of the better looking Nomos watches, in my opinion. So I think that's nice. and then still no date. And then finally, a part of this 3 set collection is the Neomatic 41 date, which, as the name might imply, has a date. It's not 41 millimeters though; it's 40.5. They round everything, so it's 41.5. This one is actually very long for a dress watch. I mean, for a 40 millimeter dress watch, 50.5 millimeter lug to lug. That is like Portugueser sizing. So bear in mind, this might look in the photos that might not look particularly big. This wears big. It's also significantly thicker than the other two at 9.4 millimeters, but that's still very, very modest. So here are some photos of that. My least favorite by far, the date window. I do not feel works very well with the watch. I do like that it's color matched, so tip of a hat on doing that. Otherwise, but it's again not too surprising. It just, of course, it broke up the symmetry of the dial, and I don't like it on the Calatravas when they 3 o'clock date either. So again, they might be looking and saying, well, it works for Patek, and that's fine, but I never thought it worked for Patek either. I do like how they matched it though, and the handset seems to be the same color as the print on the date window, so that's a nice added touch. But um, anyway, I think part of it is I don't think the date window extends as far out as the 9 o'clock indice. So sometimes you'll see that, like they'll frame it and stuff, and they'll get it so it goes in just as far. As again, a way to try and mimic symmetry. I don't think they tried to do that here. So and it's 3,500 euro or 4,200 US dollars. So anyway, so those are these three new Nomos watches. So I thought I'd throw those out there. I think overall they look pretty good. I would lean to some other brand just because I can find something with a better handset than that. This is kind of like one of my problems with like the Patrimony line with Vacheron. The handset's like my least favorite part, but I like their handset the way it looks with the dial a little bit better than I do here. The little points on the end, the little pencil points help a bit, but um, I don't know. It just not. It's good. It's just, but it's not all the way there for me. So I probably wouldn't be in the market for any of these. But if I was, I would go for, just like when we talked Bremont earlier. I would go for our middle choice, the the one that's 38.5 millimeters. I think the 36 one would be very, very wearable. So if I was going for something super modest, I might go that way. But the little bit bigger presence, I would favor. It's more along the lines of other watches I wear, while still keeping me away from the date. Even if this big one didn't have the date here, I mean, you can kind of see it in this photo. This lug to lug over 50. I mean, I could wear this. I can get to about 52 without overhang. I had a Portuguese for a time. It's meant to wear big. I think it looks weird for a watch like this to wear big. I again, Vacheron, they have Patrimonies that are like 42 millimeter in diameter. I don't know if they push this level of lug to lug. I think those are too big as well. But of course, people with larger wrists are going to feel differently. So, but to me, the date is sort of a deal killer on it. Just the other two just look so much better. But not my favorite approach overall. But I think this is a really nice effort by Nomos. Definitely something I like better than a lot of what's in their catalog. So, given all of that, let me go ahead and catch up on chat. Let's see. So, some discussion back from when we were still talking about Longines. Neff saying, I give one exception to the 7750, and that's harboring using it as a base for their time only watches. So, thank you for that. But I don't bring up my bad memories about the Valjoux movements. Neff says, I really like these Nomos. Wow, very attractive. Tuna says, Nomos is the kind of brand that you really want to like, but somehow it just fails to get the juices flowing. Yes, and that's why I bring them up all the time. Like I did a video maybe 2 years ago of brands I want to love, and I just can't. Like the two big ones are Nomos and Zen. Everyone seems to love both of those brands. I love so much about what they do. And then when I look at their watches, I can't find any of them that make me want to spend the money. And so I almost get annoyed annoyed with myself that I can't make myself like them more, because so much about what both brands do. And interestingly, both German brands. So maybe there's something there where I'm just like, gosh, guys, why can't you come on, do it? And I just can't cross the line. Nomos and Zen have gotten closer as time has gone by. I found more and more things that kind of work. But when you consider the price point, there's always just something I'm just like, I'd rather buy this instead. That's what ends up happening with me. Hey, good morning, Pocket Watch Time. Welcome to the tail end of the live stream. But glad to have you here with us. Tuna says, I have heard about Nomos and their lugs before. Yes, they're infamous lugs, really. They're very long. Uh, Bigger risk people, I would say definitely take a look at Nomos. If you like the dial designs, this might work really, really well for you. Especially some of those that are the over 40 millimeter diameter ones. Because I know people who have very large wrists who they have the opposite problem. They look at all these dress watches that are like 38 millimeter, 38.5, and they're like, but I don't want a 45 millimeter lug to lug watch. It looks small on my wrist. So you need watches to appeal to the other cohort. Von Kroll, welcome to live stream. Says, any opinion on I'm going to missay it, Biolic Leclue, a micro brand automatic watch, only 8.9 millimeters thick and 40 millimeters in diameter. I have never heard of that watch, so I have to search for it. So you're going to hear me typing away on this. The keyboard is mechanical, so it's loud. All right, so the Biolic Watch Company. Let's throw it up. Why not? Ask the chat. Look at this and help Von Kroll. Give your opinions. So he has an assortment. Okay. My thoughts. Case shape. This is an interesting case shape. It reminds me of something. It's weird because the bezel is very round, but the case shape is going with what? Like a hexagon or octagon, I guess. Right? Yeah. Not It's very avant-garde. Not too bad. Like, it's okay. I don't love it. It reminds me of someone were to take like a Bell and Ross and some standard round watch and kind of say, get together, you two. Or you maybe took a Bell and Ross and a Daniel Roth and kind of said, be a sports watch and have a round bezel. So that part, I like the radial circles in the middle. That part I like. I like the font for the numerals. I'm a big fan of Arabic numerals in general on a lot of watches. Um, well, okay, I'm gonna hedge. I like their size. The serif font that they're using here, especially on the tips of the ones, I don't know. It doesn't. It looks a little weird to me. And on the 5 too, this really sharp angle, very unique. So I'll give them credit, but it's not my favorite font choice. Whatever it ended up being. Don't like the date wheel's not color matched, so that's a knock on the watch. Deployant strap that looks pretty nice, and it looks relatively comfortable. So I like that. Dial color I like. I like the radial effect as well. Like we stay light and then we kind of go dark towards the edge. Kind of a fume approach to it, but but not going the elegant route. It's much more sporty. Do kind of like that they do have the numerals even overhanging a little bit. That's very odd, but I think it kind of works for the sporty look. Well loomed, looks like. I like that. Another ding though, date window cuts into the center here of the ring, whereas the 9 doesn't even get to the line. So we lose symmetry there. So I'm going to knock it for that. Signed crown. Where are the specs? Yeah, the strap looks nice. All right, 550 euro. So what are the sizes? All right, lug to lug 48 millimeters. You already noted it was a 40 millimeter case and only 8.9 millimeters thick. What's the movement? 120 meters water resistance and sapphire crystal. Salida SW300. Okay, so you get a 56-hour power reserve. I wouldn't buy it. It's too avant-garde for me, even at the price. But for the price, if you like the way the dial looks, I'd pull the trigger on it. Because I mean, yeah, you won't be able to easily resell it. So if you hate it, it's basically all sunk cost. I mean, I don't even know you could find anyone to buy it, quite frankly. Just in terms of sometimes if I get a watch and I'm not sure, I have to I will factor in what will I do with this watch if I hate it. With a watch like this at this price point, I would give it away. So that would just be, I wouldn't even try and sell it. I'd just be like, if I fell out of love with it or something about it bugged me, it looks like it would wear very comfortable. Just some of the dial decisions specifically would keep me away from it. So anyway, that's probably more thought than you wanted me to say, but and handset looks for what it is for the like. See, these are kind of like the pencil, like the Nomos, but they're thick enough that they don't look stupid to me. The Nomos ones are so I guess it's the thinness of them that bug me. I like the handset on the watch. I had mentioned that, so I'll go ahead and note it. I do like that part, but no, it wouldn't be a watch for me. Um, so let me see what the we'll put that up here. Well, the chat. What did the chat have to say? All right, back on the Nomos discussion. Koji notes that the 35 millimeter onion fits his wrist like a glove. Neff says that this reminds him of a visitor. And Von Kroll says the time teller did a review of this one, but his example had messed up hands, which was weird. I've not seen it. I don't remember the last time teller video I saw actually. So I've not, this is a first for me to see the watch. Pocket watch time likes the case shape, but something isn't working for him. For me, it's more the like I could get behind the case shape. I think if I looked at this more, kind of like Daniel again, that's kind of where I got that Daniel Roth vibe. Price aside, Daniel Roth, when I first saw the case, or the same with like Gerald Charles, I'm just kind of like, really? And as I look at him more, I'm like, you know what? It's kind of funky. Kind of like how Parmigiani has older Parmigiani. I like the who doesn't like the new integrated one, but the PF Tondas, but like the older Tondas, they grew on me over time as I looked at the cases more and the teardrop lugs and stuff. And for some people, it's too weird, especially when you factor in the dial. Whereas I didn't have a big problem getting behind some of the Parmigiani dials. Here, it's like there's so like if this didn't have the date and we had the same dial design with the kind of the fume burst effect with the rings, and we changed the font. I would like it more. I think I could be okay with the font hanging over, but I want it to hang, it's weird because it's like I want it to hang over equally on both sides. I'm more forgiving of that, but the serif choices, the font's serif, I should say, is like especially up close. And maybe, wearing it wouldn't bug me so much. It reminds me of a kid with a crayon, like these ones, they're just too jagged. And look how janky this really aggressive cut in the 5 where I have the minus. That is a really sharp angle to take to carve that 5. It looks like it was 3D printed with one pass. The font application, the applique indices look very cheap to me. And I think the serif aspects of it are what make that stand out. So I would have wanted something this size, but more traditional, maybe non-serifed. I do like serif fonts. I prefer them on dress watches, but I think that's the part. Like here, even from the distance, like this 5 looks weird to me in a way that it's like, why does the 5 feel off? Oh, it's kind of a creative font. And then when I look closer, I'm like, no, it's like it just got really aggressive on the cut. Like the printer couldn't do it elegant. Like it was too small to be. I don't know. It just it look. Those are the pieces that make it feel off to me. I also think the date, obviously, this is very common at this price point, but if this date had been in white to match the font of the applied indices, or match the color of the applied indices, but you disked it black, it would have been better, especially since the kind of gradient fade, this almost fume, but it's like more of a everything's in a tier, like lighter, then this is pretty consistent, then this is pretty consistent, and then this is pretty consistent. So as long as it was the same color and the disc only occupied that one spot, you could have it color match pretty easily because you don't need that. It'd look weird if the disc needed to fade as well, but I don't think you would have to. But again, I don't want to overstay. I mean, 550 euros. I'm asking for an awful lot of stuff, but it's what we do. We're judgmental. We're judgmental on watches. So, I mean, I wouldn't let the date window put me off if I loved everything else about the watch. I have plenty of watches where I have a non-color match date. So, it's just if I, pie in the sky. If I could have a dream, what would my dream be? So, so those are kind of thoughts that I have there. Let's see. Ron Kroll says the movement and the 8.9 millimeter thickness are both draws for me. Definitely. 56 hours of power reserve is awesome, especially at this price point. And that thickness, I had a Tudor 1926. It was around 9.2 millimeters thick. I cannot, well, maybe I could, but I'll try not. I'll say I cannot overstate how comfortable a thin watch like that is. That's my biggest regret about getting rid of that watch. I had so many other watches that did the same thing. I let it go, and I don't really I don't plan to get another 1926. I don't really feel lost like that for watches. So, but like in my current watch collection, I think the only thing I have that is as thin as that 1926 was is my Reverso, which is a very different watch. So in that regard, um, I have been on the hunt for a more dressy style watch that's actually thin because well, actually, the Parmigiani I got might be about that same thickness, but it is super comfortable to wear. Whereas my other dress watch, the longer one, because of the big date, that's actually closer to a 12 millimeter watch. So it's not as thin as I might normally want for other things. So Koji says it's a rather thin bezel. It seems larger, and there's no lug issue. But I think that is the discussion back on the Nomos. It is. I went and reconfirmed. So Boncro says I may choose a different SW300 watch. I've never owned an SW300. I haven't heard any complaints about them. I've had like the 200 series for some watches. Like my Stova Flieger uses some version of the hand wind version actually, it might have been a date version that they converted. There's no ghost date, but yeah, I think it's just an SW200. And Brown Curl says, considering the movement, that price is quite reasonable. Is that the SW300? Isn't that what the Christopher Ward like puts into the fancy, like the titanium 12s? I think that's where I've mostly heard people talk about it. Tuna says, well, Koji, obviously I have seen Nomos online, but perhaps I should examine one for real. I'm still having this Nomos conversation. And Von Curl says he asked for the opinions and he got him. And notes, yes, of course. It's what we do. We focus on what's wrong rather than focus. Well, and I think the reason is even when a watch is quote unquote affordable, and I don't want to over like we're talking hundreds of euros. This is not small potatoes. And falling down and getting into watch collecting, and I have watches that range quite a bit, and I know I have a lot that a lot of people would never buy, and that I never want to lose sight of that. This is real money for real people, and I I am a cheapskate in so much that I do. I still go to the store and I buy soda pop based off of what's on sale, and so when I look at prices, everything is, that's always a factor. And I'm like, if I'm talking about spending over 500 of something, to me, that's serious money and it deserves serious consideration. Then I try and bear in mind as I go through, okay, well, we're not talking about a 5,000 euro watch. So what's reasonable for me to expect? What compromises would I be willing to accept for all the additional savings versus getting a watch that checks all those boxes? And then, we ask the question, do I go ahead and save up for the one that checks all the boxes? Or will this make me happy because it's got so many other things going on for it? That's the part. So, because sometimes the cheaper watches, I think, is the answer. I agree with people that will tell you like if you're set on a Rolex Submariner, like if that's your dream watch and you're thinking, it's so much money, let me get a Tudor Black Bay to scratch the itch. It might temporarily, but I would say save up for what you really want. But if you're like, I want a watch that's really cool, and you're like, it's not perfect, but look at the price on it and go, but for the price, is it good enough? That's a very fair question and can be something that will give you an inexpensive watch that you enjoy wearing all of the time. So there you go. The more you know. Imagine a little star shooting sort of thing. Pocket Watch Time notes the price is stellar. Definitely with the movement. This is a very, if I loved the watch, I would at least look and see what else this brand has. Because if this is how they price, could be very, very, very interesting to go ahead and explore. And okay, Von Krell is confirming, yes, it is Christopher Ward, the 12 titanium models of the SW3. Okay, I thought I had read about the movement fairly recently. Pocket Watch Time notes, Coke or Pepsi, taste doesn't matter. Buy the Publix BOGO. I still buy, all right, for pop, for chips, I'll do bottom shelf, no name, whatever. The branding has sucked me in too much for pop. So all my pop is name brand. But unless there's nothing on sale, then I pick whatever I want. But usually there's like three 12 packs, get a fourth for free, stuff like that. If it's basically any name brand, I'll do PepsiCo, I'll do Coke, and I'll do 7-Up stuff. So it ends up being, now, if I have my pick, I generally lean more towards Coke products, though Pepsi, at least in our area, does the bottling for Dr. Pepper. And well, Tuna does not like Dr. Pepper. I do. So I will lean Dr. Pepper if I want that style, but normally I'll go Coke products, all things being equal. And if 7-Up's the one on sale, then I do Sunkissed. Diet. I gave up sugar pop a long time ago. Speaking of giving up, it's time for me to give up on this live stream. But you all have been great. It's not you. It's not you. It's me. It's me, and I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm running out of voice. And we got through everything. We did our 5 new releases. We learned about the Leclu watch and how somehow for less than 600 euros, they were able to get an SW300 into a very unique looking watch. Definitely doesn't feel like an homage to any, already popular brand. So, the tip of the hat for that. I'll plan on having another live stream on Saturday. Of course, we'll see what news comes out to kind of inform what conversation that will be. And I don't know if there'll be any pre-recorded this upcoming. That's always just play it by ear. Again, I had a couple of videos from the last week. One about a new AP collab targeted to women. That's a YouTube short. And then I did a video a little bit about going over the highlights of the financial 2023 press release from Swatch Group. So if you're kind of curious about what worked for Swatch and what didn't, that video is, I think, under 4 minutes. So I tried to keep it succinct because numbers can be boring. But otherwise, I hope you all have a really good weekend. Thank you so much for who are able to tune in live. Feel free to leave a comment if you're watching it on record. I do go back and read those. And that's it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.